Hello, brothers. My name is Doug Draper. I'm a 1992 graduate from the University of Kansas, and I'd like to welcome you to On the Banks. On the Banks is the only fraternity podcast where brothers meet, we share our stories, and we embrace the shared values of our fraternity. And today we have an amazing discussion with an amazing individual. It's Hugh Morton. He is an Auburn graduate from 1969. And he has a truly amazing story from top of the world. And that's where I'll leave it for now. This episode, we're going to kind of refer to it as Reflections on High Places. So, Hugh, before we jump into it, I wanted to read a little snippet from somebody that spoke a little bit about you and some things that you're doing that we'll learn more about. So here it is. I'm going to read it verbatim. It says, in 1986, while on a trek in the Himalayan mountains, an adventurer and Phi Gamma Delta brother came face to face with Mount Everest, an event that would dramatically change the course of his life. At 39 years old, and an age when many mountaineers are retiring, this 1969 graduate from Auburn University began a 30-year odyssey that would have him climbing major mountains around the world, including Everest and the coveted Seven Summits Challenge. He's been referred to as an adventure seeker, avid adventurist, and an adventure junkie. So, of course, he's also a beloved brother in our fraternity. So, Hugh, I think I've spoken enough. Welcome to our show. How are you doing?
Thank you. Doing great. Thank you.
Great. So before we jump into the topic and some amazing stories that you have in your life, let's learn a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're from, talk about your family a little bit, and kind of how you ended up at university or Auburn University.
I grew up in a little town called the Valley, Alabama. I first went to Tulane University, spent a couple of years there, and I transferred to Auburn my junior year. One day I was actually going to look up an old friend at the Fiji House, and I knew nothing about Fiji or fraternities. Walked in and saw an old friend of mine that actually, went to Boy State together in my hometown, and one thing led to another. They invited me to join the fraternity, at least to pledge, and actually Drexel wanted me my pledge trainer, and I said, hey, this is a great group of guys. I wound up spending the next 2 years there. As a graduate brother, I actually spent 3.5 years at Auburn. And it was a wonderful experience.
Yeah, that's great.
I am married. I've been married 51 years to the same girl I met at Auburn. We have 2 daughters, Lindsay and Whitney, and they've given me 6 grandchildren, 4 boys and 2 girls.
Excellent.
And,
excellent.
It's they really brightened and enriched my life.
That's excellent.
They've been some of the biggest supporters in my adventure stunts and adventure trips I've done. And of course, now writing this book as I have, which we'll talk later about.
Yeah.
Supporters of this too.
Awesome. Hugh, when we were talking a little bit before the show, you talked about, you used the term high achievers when you were looking at the Phi Gam house there at Auburn, and you said you wanted to align and you thought those brothers were high achievers. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I found myself among a group of high achievers. I tell my grandchildren, I said, look, you need to surround yourself with people, not low achievers, not the folks who are going to drag you down. You need to do it with folks who are going to lift you up. And I found that in the chapter at Auburn. Certainly, I don't know about all Fiji chapters, but I look at what some of those guys went on to do in life, and really made their parents proud. And I was proud to be part of the organization. I think it encouraged me to set my sights in my life a little bit higher. And in that regard, I certainly feel like I owe a certain debt to the Fijis who made me part of that group.
That's great. Yeah.
It would encourage that, for anybody to have the same experience I had. And anyway, it was, I met my wife there, and like I said, I met some very good friends. I still have good friends in Fiji. We still, Fiji chapter there, and they've all done well, and I feel like I've been trying to be a bit of a compliment, my achievement to the organization.
Hmm. Right. Well, there's a lot of funny segues I could make with the high achievers comment, but so I guess I'll do that. You spoke about high achievers, and you certainly have achieved some lofty heights in the world. So let's jump into your passion about mountaineering, and maybe even your passion about being an adventure junkie. So tell us how that came to be, and how that transitioned into mountaineering to be kind of your primary passion.
Well, as you said, Doug, I'm more of an adventure seeker. I think I coined that phrase, adventure junkie, uh, than really a true mountaineer. I think the first line I put in my book, I said, people may think the number of mountains I've climbed that I'm a dyed-in-the-wool mountaineer. I'm really not. But I found in mountaineering to be the ultimate adventure. It was something, coming from Flatland, Alabama, I never envisioned I'd be a mountaineer. That's not something I had anticipated, but when I went on that trek to Nepal in '86, gosh, we ran all these mountains, and this guide we had was telling me about all the mountaineers he knew. And then we climbed Kalapatar, and here Mount Everest is right in front of me, and it kind of captivated me. And mine, the Nepalese friend, said the mountain merged with my soul. And I said, well, I don't know, but it haunted me for the next 5.5 years. I was fortunate enough, some 45 years later, to stand on the top of the mountain and look down at that same little brown peak that I first observed Mount Everest from. It was a great feeling of accomplishment. And I got into mountaineering. I found that I was actually good at it. It's one sport I was good at. Have a natural adaptability to altitude, which some people don't have. And I've continued to climb after I finished the Everest challenge successfully. I kind of got caught up in the notion with a friend of mine and going ahead and do all the 7 summits, which was a very popular goal for amateur, what I call amateur climbers, certainly not non-professionals. And I spent, a total of 12 years pursuing that goal. Did finish my last one, number 7, in Antarctica in December 1999. And I was somewhere around the 70th person, 69th, 7th person to complete that challenge, and kind of a neat group to join. Good group of high achievers there too.
Yeah. I was talking to my daughter, who's a sophomore at the University of Kansas, and I was saying that I'm about ready to interview a brother who is in rarefied air with the fact that there's only been 100. What's the total count now of that have reached the 7 summits?
Doug, I looked it up to see. Of course, it's been 22 years now since I was there. That number's still under 500.
That's unbelievable. Man, that's not 500. That's like in the history of the world.
We're talking about the total world, right? This worldwide, there's been some 500. That includes a lot of the guides and people that have gone down. I had a Sherpa here last week because we did 3 book signings, and Sherpa came and joined me, and he, I think, is been top ever 17 times as a guide. But he too is on that list. What I'm trying to say, that you got a lot of guys like him who are guides that are also in that list of some 500.
That's terrific. So let's backtrack to one of the first ones. Obviously, Everest. People, including myself, are like, "Oh my gosh, what an amazing experience and accomplishment." Walk us through a little bit about the actual climb. I know there's people always hear about base camp and some other terms of certain areas that you're walking through it. So just over the next couple of minutes, talk about the literal experience of how it was hiking up Everest, and then we can end with that cool picture that you have that's on the cover of your book right now.
I tell people climbing Everest is not nearly as glamorous as TV and some of the movies want to portray it. It's a lot longer than you realize. I was gone from home for 10 weeks. We got to base camp, and it was 6 weeks later before we summited. It takes a lot of time to, build camps and set ropes and get the thing ready to actually climb the mountain. And you've got to get your body acclimated in the process. And it just takes a while. And, I went for 6 weeks without a shower. My lips stayed cracked most of the time, and sleeping in sub-zero temperature is a lot of drudgery in it too, but you know, I tell people the sweet taste of victory kind of made it all worth it.
Mhm.
You know, you spend some time on the way coming in. We took 8 days just acclimatizing, but that's the big issue. You can't just go climb the mountain, not to nearly 30,000 feet. I mean, they tell you if you're, you know, a pilot, if you lose oxygen at 30,000, you get about 2 minutes before you pass out. And because we had this long process of getting our bodies adjusted and acclimated to it, and some of our people just never did. It's so I think I had a bit of a natural adaptability to it that made me a little better climber. But you know, we had guys 5, 6, 7 on our team that just flaked out in altitude problems.
Mm.
And I was fortunate with a long acclimation period to do well on the summit. I thought really I could have probably done another 1,000 feet, but we ran out of mountain to climb. It was a great experience. But like I say, it was a lot of hard work. You know, you're going up the mountain, setting ropes, transporting gear, food, and everything up, getting it all ready, and then you come down and rest. And some of them go down, some of the Russian people go down as far as 12 or 13,000 feet and sit for 2 or 3 couple of weeks before they come back, let the body adjust again. We set out, guys, 4 or 5 days and waiting on the break in the weather. The interesting thing about Everest, you only get for sometimes 4 or 5 days a year that it's suitable to climb. When I was there, the first good day was on the 10th of May, and the last day was the day I summited on the 15th.
Mm.
The wind typically blows when that summit, gosh, over 100 miles an hour. That's when sometimes you see a lot of crowding of the mountain. You got so many people trying to do it on 1 or 2 days, the same days,
Mm-hmm.
because there's not many good days. Last year, only 3 days altogether.
How long, whenever you did summit, I'm just curious, how long were you on top of the world? You spend 5 minutes up there, 2 minutes, a half, you set up a picnic? What goes on there at the top?
I tell people, Doug, that mountaineering is an interesting sport. You know, you spend several years trying to get somewhere, you work very hard, the process of getting there, go through all sorts of drudgery and work, and you get on top of that place you want to go, and you spend about 20 minutes, and you come down.
Mm.
I really would have just stayed up there and visited for a while, but you run a risk the longer you do that, because the weather tends to change in the afternoons, and history of mountain is littered with people who were too slow getting up and too slow getting down and created problems. So we stayed 20 minutes. By then, my guy's ready to get off.
Mm-hmm.
Pictures, eat a chocolate bar, whatever, drink a little water, and let's get on off of this thing. And because the summit's only halfway. They tell you first thing they teach you mountaineering, being on the summit's only half the climb. You still got to get down.
Mm-hmm.
Where a lot of the accidents happen.
Yeah. So let's talk to the brothers about the 7 summits, right? So tell us, first of all, what is the 7 summits? And then why did you decide to tackle that next challenge?
Well, the 7 summits is just a name given to climbing the highest peak on each of the 7 continents. This was the goal that was kind of made popular in '84 by a guy named Dick Bass. And he had a partner that climbed 6 of them with him, but the other partner didn't make all 7. But they wrote a book called The 7 Summits, and it's become kind of a goal for, I say, amateur climbers, people like myself who are not guides. We don't do this. We've got real jobs, and we climb along with it. And it's a pretty decent goal. I mean, the thing I tell people when they ask me what it takes to climb, I say it takes persistence. You got to stick with it if you want to get all 7 of them. And I did, and I was fortunate enough that things turned out well for me on it. We'll talk a little bit more about that issue of persistence if you like, but
yeah.
More than anything is one of the big goals, one of the ways to accomplish that mountain. I mean, people do them in different orders. For me, I did Everest the 3rd out of the 7. My friend Mike Stewart wanted to climb all 7, and he talked me into going with him. Mike was not fortunate enough to complete it. I think Mike actually wound up with 3 or 4 of the summits. I was fortunate enough to go ahead and finish all 7 of them.
That's terrific. Do you have, of the 7, is there a favorite, or are they all unique in their own right?
But they're all unique. I mean, obviously Everest is the longest and the highest. I enjoyed Antarctica. I mean, it's very cold, but it's a splendid, I mean, it's just a beautiful location. Everything, the sky down there is this cobalt blue and all reflecting on the white snow, and the snow just, endless miles of it. I just enjoyed it. I'd go back to Antarctica again. McKinley was a tough climb for us. If you read my book, you'll see that. I don't have time here to go into all the challenges we encountered on McKinley. Some of that was on making.
Mm.
So, of all of them, I guess, the one that's obviously is the biggest and most difficult probably is Everest. Although McKinley gets close. I mean, it kills people too every year.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were easier. One in Australia was fairly easy, but again, you had to get there, and you still had to endure the weather and the wind. But it's hard for me to say which one's my favorite. They each have certain characteristics that I like. I would go back to Antarctica again, though. Sure would.
Yeah, that's an interesting choice. I would not have thought about that.
Well, I wouldn't either. But having been down there, it's just really splendidly beautiful.
Yeah.
Never anticipated.
Yeah. Well, I know in your journeys, just like the show On the Banks, we get a chance to meet interesting people that have impacted our lives. And I know that you created quite a connection with some of the Sherpas and Nepalese that assisted you in those climbs. And then you kind of got to the point where you're helping support some educational some education out there in Kathmandu. So talk about your relationship with some of the Sherpas that you created, and then talk about the school and the educational aspect that you've been giving towards in the last several decades.
Having been over there, you can't help but appreciate how hardworking these people are. The Sherpas, the people living in and around Mount Everest. They're from Tibet. 400 years ago, they moved across the mountain and live in and around Mount Everest. They've been guides, and ever since the first British expedition, they've been guides and porters, and I think without them, most of them succeeded. But you see how these people struggle to have anything. I mean, Lot Parita Sherpa was here last week, and he just blew everybody away when he said he had to walk 4 hours one way to go to school. He said, I walked 4 hours, and it was not just walking. We're talking about down a mountain, up a mountain, across a roaring river on a swinging bridge. And he said, I did 4 hours there, 4 hours back to get an education. It's just a struggle for them to get an education. There are only two schools, actually. There were only two schools in what we call the Khumbu area. And those were built by Edmund Hillary. His foundation maintained them. The country of Nepal is a very poor country, and they just can't afford to build schools up in the mountains. And some of these kids live so far, they can't even be a day or two walk to the nearest school. Todd Burleson, who I summited Everest with, he and I wrote together on the summit. Todd, 23 years ago, decided he wanted to build a school in Kathmandu, boarding school for the Sherpa, orphan Sherpa kids, and kids who had lived so far they couldn't get an education. And I mean, you see them hungry over there to learn to read and write. And gosh, my kids used to complain about having to ride the bus to school. And I felt when I was over there, gosh, I'd like to come out 3 or 4 months and appreciate what they've got. But Todd started the school there in Kathmandu, and I agreed at the time to help him fund it, and I did. And through 2008, when the housing market crashed, and none of my investments didn't do well, and I backed off on that. But it's now being funded by donations from all over the world, people who've climbed and trekked over there that want to sponsor a Sherpa kid. And they've actually got 2 schools now, as I understand. It's done well. And I thought that I would dedicate the proceeds of my book that I published just very recently to the school.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked Lot Parita Sherpa if he would come here and help me to promote it. And he did. He spent a couple of days with us. And this guy's kind of a celebrity Sherpa now, and I could go on these details, but I watched him for an hour on national television as a spokesman talking about the problems they had with the avalanche in 2014. But Lot came, and we had 3 great book signings and events here promoting the book, and I was very appreciative of him coming. But I guess to summarize, you see how how hungry these kids are to learn to read and write. And the obstacles are so strong against them, particularly some of them, the orphans and the ones that live way back in the mountains. And these schools, boarding schools, are actually educating these kids. And it's been a real, I won't say bonanza, but it's been a good, it's really helped people, a group of people that otherwise have struggled to even know, to read, because they have no electricity and stuff like that around there when I was there anyway.
Mhm.
Tough life, but I felt, gosh, I'd like to help these people who helped me achieve a goal in my life.
Mhm. That's great. Well, obviously, one of the values of the fraternity is service, and you've lived that. So, we've talked a little bit about the book, and maybe we should have jumped in that out of the gate, but that's something that you had written recently. And
Let me get it.
yeah. And it was just, yeah, no, that's the whole point. Let's get it. So talk to us. Show us the book. Tell us about the picture. Yeah, tell us about the picture and the book and why you decided to write it now and everything. So talk to us.
I was in base camp after our first aborted attempt to summit, and we looked rough and felt rough, and I had this frostbite all over the side of the face. Shows a picture, and I looked rough. And talking to this guy, and he told me, he said, "You be still, don't move." And he saw the reflection of Everest and the ice fall in my glasses. And he came back and took a great shot of it. My wife loved it, and she and my daughter came up with the phrase "reflections on high places," and that is the title of the book. And we decided to put that picture on the cover.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was kind of, but we got a lot of comments about that picture.
Good. Tell us about the book. Why now? Why did you decide to put pen to paper?
Actually, I wrote the first 90 pages over 20 years ago, and it just wasn't long enough to make a book.
Mm-hmm.
I set it aside, and I decided a couple of years ago, I need to finish this thing. I'm not getting any younger. I'd like to leave I've had some unique experiences. Let's say, call it that. I'd like to document this for my family, my grandkids, my great grandkids, any posterity might have, and for my friends. I keep having a lot of friends saying, "You need to write a book." So I spent the last couple of years finishing this and publishing it, and I'm proud of it. I have a lot of good comments about it. It's easy reading, 200 pages, and you can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it on Barnes and Noble, and of course you can buy it through my website, which is the title of the book.com, Reflections on Places. If you buy it through the website, I can autograph it. But yeah, it's been interesting response to it, and I've actually got a lot of donations to the school. That's probably more than I'll make on the book.
Mm-hmm.
I got started on it. Fake another check today from a friend that sort of liked the story and said, "Hey, I'd like to help a little bit."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you'll see others, long lost friends and acquaintances that will come into your life again from the book. We'll talk more about how the brothers can purchase the book. But you said you wrote the first 90 pages years ago, but the last chapter is about persistence. So talk to us about why that's the last chapter and how that was important in writing and the writing process.
I did. In the last chapter, I wrote several things. I brought up to date where a lot of the characters in my book, a lot of them went on to be real high achievers and real notable. A lot of them television type. But yeah, I included in that chapter a situation. I said, I have a lot of people ask me, what does it take to climb a big mountain? What does it take to climb the 7 summits? And I tell them invariably, it takes persistence and determination. And that's a subject that I obviously picked up like the emphasis on in my Fiji days, because our brother Calvin Coolidge coined a pretty good phrase, quotation about the subject of persistence. And I was given a card when I was there, chapter, and I kept that thing in my billfold for years. I've since found a poster that has the same quotation on it. It's mounted on my wall. Subject of persistence. And I included that quotation in my book. It was some from Zig Ziglar and a few others that, and I even told a story, and I'll tell that if I have a minute to do it. Pete Athens, who was one of our guides on the Everest trip, I think it was his 7th attempt. He had summited the last 2 times. And I asked Pete, I said, Pete, how do you climb this mountain? We're in base camp before we got started. He looked at me straight in the eye. He said, here you climb it one step at a time, one pull the rope at a time. He said, if you keep going and you don't quit, if you persist in it, you'll reach the summit. And I like to tell that story because I think it illustrates that point. Just like writing a book. It takes a lot of persistence, finish a book, trust me. A lot of work involved in it. But that's something I like to share. We're going to get Kathy back to my Fiji days because I think that whole subject was drummed into my head in that era. And I think it's a big part of success. You know, it isn't the only ingredient, but I think it takes a lot of ingredients to be a formula for success. But if you don't apply them persistently and diligently, if you don't dedicate yourself to it, it doesn't matter anyway. From all through the north. But anyway, that's my thoughts. That's the reason I decided to put it in my book. The chapter's not entirely that last about resistance, but it's had some follow-ups on it. And I enjoyed telling about the people. I think, you know, my wife says the best thing about my mountaineering career to her have been all these wonderful people we have met, some very unique people. The Sherpa, the Nepalese guide, the Russian guide we had, on and on and on, I could tell. And I did list those in my book. And I tried to bring it up to date where they are now. And that part, a lot of people tell me it gives it a little personal effect, which I tried to include in the book.
Yeah, meeting friends and brothers and shared experiences. I mean, you just nailed it with writing that book for sure. The mountaineering aspect in your life has a lot of similarities. So a couple more questions, Hugh. I saved the good ones for the end. So the first one is talk about, it's a 2-part question. What's one of your best accomplishments or proudest moment in your mountaineering career or your life, whatever one of your proudest moments are? And then the same question within the fraternity. So proudest moment as a mountaineer or your life, and then proudest moment as a member of our fraternity.
Regard to the mountaineering, obviously, you know, standing on top of Everest was a goal I worked on for 5.5 years, and that was a pretty proud moment. And of course, finishing the 7 summits in Antarctica was a proud moment. I tell people in my book that, you know, interesting thing is the people I was climbing with seemed to be as proud of that accomplishment as I was. They were part of it, and they cheered me on. But as far as my life, of course, you know, getting married is one of them.
Yeah.
Things in my life. Having my daughters born is another.
51 years.
Been married 51 years, having 50-year anniversary with them.
Yeah, I heard a reminder in the background there, so I'm glad you got that one in.
I think my wife slipped in the list of what I've been seeing.
Oh, that's perfect. That is perfect. That is great. That is great. So let me ask you this, Hugh. Here's the second question is, if you could rewind back to your FIGAM days at Auburn, what advice would you give yourself? So what advice would you give your 20-year-old FIGAM self today with all of the experiences you've had, both on the mountain, off the mountain?
That's a good question. You know, I think I was, you know, I would say, you know, aim a little higher. I was in my late 30s before I really figured out what it really took to be successful in life, and then a commitment you've got to do to achieving your goals. I think I did a good effort as a young man. I don't think I gave a winning effort necessarily. I think I learned that, and I think mountaineering taught me a little bit of that, what you've got to do to really succeed in something, the application you've got to make of yourself and the focus got to put into achieving your goals. That's what I might say. Look, you know, aim a little higher, work a little harder, and focus more on what your goals are. And perhaps a little less confusion too, not so many goals. It's hard sometimes to be successful in all of them. And I think it might have been a problem for me as a younger man. I began to focus a little bit more as I got older, and I think that helps you achieve higher levels of achievement.
That's great.
The other question, by the way, my wife slipped in the notes here. She wanted to tell you about the applying yourself. She likes the idea that we train when rainy days, we just take a 65-pound backpack, go down to the 70-story Westin Inn in Atlanta and hiked up and down it. And she used to tell the stairwell, stairwell in that hotel. And she used to always tell me if I ever got accosted or arrested for doing it, she's going to deny that she knew me.
That's great.
I mean, that was just, that's something I never thought of doing, but my partner Mike and I did it. And we really trained that 10 months before. I trained at a level I don't think I could ever do again. But again, that's what I'm trying to emphasize. I think you got to focus on your goals, and you got to apply that in level of intensity that's not just good, but as a winning effort.
Mm-hmm. So if there's some brothers out there that have been inspired from your story and want to learn more about mountaineering and kind of how to get started, you say you need to stay focused, and there may be some brothers like, I don't know where to start. I don't know how to do it. Everest may not be the ultimate goal, but getting out there and tackling a few mountains. So give some advice if there's some brothers that want to learn more about mountaineering.
Well, that's a good question. I knew nothing about it when I set this goal. I didn't know a mountaineer. I found a guy, somebody called me about a friend. They knew a guy here in Atlanta who was a mountaineering guide. And that sort of set me on my course, and a lot of things developed from there. But this day and time, you actually got some pretty good guiding services that you can contact that are putting together a lot of climbs. They're competent, some of them are not, but there are some who are. I mean, the one I use, this guy I climbed Everest with, Todd Burleson, owns a company in Seattle that's called Alpine Ascents International. And there are others. I just mentioned him because I actually climbed Everest with his group, and I climbed Antarctica with his company. But Todd and I are very good friends at this point. But I just want to say it's easier maybe now, I think, it was 30 years ago when I started, because there's some competent companies out there that put a lot of it together for you. I guess what I recommend to them is to go online and ask, mountaineering guiding companies, international guiding companies, because you can start with Rainier. I mean, there are two companies, and his is one of them, that actually will take you out in a 2-day climb, and they will train you what you need to know for that part of it. And I actually spent a whole week in ice training before I went to Everest. And they'll do that with you too, but they'll introduce you to the subject, Mount Rainier in Seattle, and you can see if you like the sport or not.
That's great.
My friend Lot Parita, who I mentioned, was here earlier last week. He actually did that. I think he's done that 200 times. He's guided that mountain beginner in the sport, and you can see then if you like it, and it gives you. They'll train you enough to climb Rainier by a whole half a day or day training there on the mountain, and they're right there to do it. That's the way my friend Mike Stewart got into it. He actually did a climb of Rainier and loved it. And Mike's gosh was climbing 10 years before I ever got into it. And he and I have climbed mountains around the world together. I'm going to mention his name. He's the one I dedicated my book to. If you read my book, you'll see Mike Stewart throughout the whole lot.
Yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to end with you, is tell us the name of your book again, and tell us the best place to find it. Let's have our brothers help support you and its cause. So give us the 1-2 punch.
Reflections on High Places, and it can be bought, like I said, in Barnes and Noble. You can buy it on Amazon. You can take the title and put .com, and that comes to my website, and I can autograph it. It's actually a little cheaper to buy it through the website, but no, it's out there, and where sales are going good. I've been pleased with it.
That's terrific.
It's sort of a story I wouldn't feel like I wanted to share. I really was focusing more on my family to start with, and them too. But a lot of other people have said they found a little bit of inspiration in it. That pleases me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's how I was gonna say that you certainly have inspired me to learn more. Hugh, your story is amazing. Your experiences are amazing. And the way that you've taken those and encompassed them in your life, both as a FIGAM member and, you know, as your family and as you've grown, is very, very inspiring. And I'm very proud to know you as a brother. So thank you so much for joining us today, Hugh. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Great. And I'd like to thank all of our brothers in our audience for joining us today on the banks. We look forward to seeing you again. We'll meet next time and share stories, meet some new brothers, and have a great time. So until we meet again, mighty proud to be a Fiji. Thanks.